and welcome to Regency Rum Bluffers. I've been doing some reading recently and I came across a character at the Battle of Waterloo whose story was absolutely incredible. And I thought that just for a bit of light relief from all of the flu epidemic, I'd tell you about his story. His name was Sir Frederick Cavendish Ponsonby. And he was at the Battle of Waterloo at the age of 33. I've got my notes here, so don't mind if my eyes keep going down. At Waterloo, he was attached to the 12th Light Dragoons, and they came into action shortly after the famous charge by the Scots Greys. Scots Greys obviously famously had gone too far and were attacked by the French Lancers. And the 12th Light Dragoons did exactly the same. They went in support and went too far. And in process of this action, Ponsonby was very, very badly wounded. But he did manage to survive the battle. And he was able to tell his story many years later at the prompting of several young ladies. It all came out at a party, and eventually a letter was written which summarised his story. And it was a story of an absolute incredible suffering and yet incredible luck at the same time. I think it's easier for me to read the letter because, quite frankly, it tells it all. At 1 o'clock, observing, as I thought, unsteadiness in a column of French infantry of 1,000 men, or thereabouts, which was advancing with irregular fire, I resolved to charge them. As we were descending at a gallop, we received from our own troops, on the right, a fire much more destructive than theirs, they having begun long before it could take effect and slackening as we drew near. So his first misfortune is that his own troops are firing on him. When we were within 50 paces of them, they turned, and much execution was done against them, as we were followed by some Belgians, who had remarked our success. But we had no sooner passed through them that we were attacked in our turn, before we could form, by about 300 Polish lancers, who had come to their relief. The French artillery pouring in amongst those a heavy fire of grape shot, which, however, for one of our men was killed 3 of their own. So it was indiscriminate stuff, and we had friendly fire in Waterloo as much as we did in Vietnam and many other kinds of conflicts since then. In the melee, I was almost disabled in both arms. So here we have him, he's riding his horse, and he's shot in both arms. Bit of a misfortune, you might think. Wait, what happens next? Followed by a few men who presently are cut down, for no quarter was asked or given. I was carried on by my horse. Well, of course he was. He'd had both his arms shot, so he couldn't do anything with it. Till, next one, receiving a blow on my head from a sabre, I was thrown senseless on my face to the ground. Blimey, one problem piling on top of another. Recovering, I raised myself a little to look round, being, I believed at that time, a condition to get up and run away. Well, I suppose he's got no arms and his head's a bit buggered, but the trouble is at least he's got his legs still, hasn't he? When a lancer, French lancer or Polish lancer, passing by, exclaimed, "Tu n'es pas mort, coquin! You are not dead, you rascal!" and stuck his lance through my back. My head dropped, the blood gushed into my mouth, a difficulty of breathing came on, and I thought all was over. Well, hardly surprising, that's 1, 2, 3, 4 wounds he's had now. Not long afterwards, it was then impossible to measure time, but I must have fallen in less than 10 minutes after the charge, a tirailleur came to plunder me, threatening to take away my life I told him he might search me, directing him to my small side pocket, in which he found $3, being all I had. He unloosened my stock and tore open my waistcoat, then leaving me in a very uneasy posture. I think the least of his worries is his posture, given the fact he's been wounded so much so far. But the story continues. He was no sooner gone than another came up for the same purpose. But assuring him I had been plundered already, he left me. Well, not bad, I suppose. Not all Frenchies are bad uns, really. Then an officer, bringing on some troops, to which presumably the tirailleur belonged, and halting where I lay, stooped down and addressed me, saying he feared I was badly wounded. No shit, Sherlock, with all that blood everywhere, not surprising. I replied that I was. Remarkable perspicacity, these Englishmen. And expressed a wish to be removed into the rear. Whose rear is what went into my mind? The French rear or the English rear? I mean, a Frenchman's not going to take him to the English rear, is he? Anyway, he said it was against orders to remove even their own men. Worth noting for what went on in that battle. No prisoners. But that if they gained the day... if they gained the day... Yeah, right. Yeah, okay. Never mind. If they gained the day, as they probably would... Better not tell him, really, have we? As they probably would, for he understood the Duke of Wellington was killed. Oh, right, okay. And that 6 battalions of the English army had surrendered. Oh, that's not right, is it? That's not fair. Never mind. Every attention in his power should be shown to me. I complained of thirst, and he held his brandy bottle to my lips. Not all Frenchies are bad ones, as I said. Directing one of his men to lay me down on my side and placed a knapsack under my head. He then passed on into the action, and I shall never know to whose generosity I was indebted. Of what rank he was I cannot say. He wore a blue greatcoat. This French officer was Major de Lussat of the Imperial Guard Dragoons, as Sir Frederick would learn in 1827, when the two met socially, and soon after, through a conversation regarding experiences during the battle, discover this coincidence of their first meeting upon the field. Unbelievable. Never mind, this guy's life is full of unbelievable things. Right, let's go back to the battle. So he's lying on the ground, all his wounds, bleeding all over the place, but at least the Frenchman's given him some brandy and he's got his head on a knapsack. By and by, another tirailleur came back and knelt down and fired over me. So he's using him now as protection whilst he's firing at the English troops, loading and firing many times and conversing with great gaiety all the while. At last he ran off, saying, "Vous serez bien aise d'entendre que nous allons nous retirer. Bonjour, mon ami. You'll be glad to hear that we're going to withdraw. Good day, my friend." Nice chap, really, considering he was a Frenchie. Whilst the battle continued in that part, several of the wounded men and dead bodies near me were hit with the balls, which came very thick in that place. Right, okay, so he's been shot and stabbed and speared and God knows what else. He's now got cannonballs flying all over him, unfortunately missing him. Towards evening, when the Prussians came up, yay, the cavalry's arrived! Excellent! Our friends the Prussians are here. Why do I think something's going to happen? They approached in 2 echelons, both of them 2 deep, passed over me in a full trot, lifting me from the ground and tumbling me about cruelly. Not so sure I do like the Prussians now. The clatter of their approach and the apprehensions excited may easily be conceived. Yeah, not surprised, mate. Much about this time, One of the royals lay across my legs. The royals, of course, is a British soldier, so he's laid across his legs. He had probably crawled thither in his agony. His weight, convulsive motions, and the air issuing from the wound in his side distressed me greatly. The latter circumstance most of all, as the case was my own. That's all? No, that's not all. It was not a dark night, and the Prussians were wandering around to plunder. Several Prussians came, looked at me, and passed on. Grand chaps. At length one stopped to examine me. I told him as well as I could, for I could speak but little German, that I was a British officer and had been plundered already. He did not desist, however, and pulled me about roughly before he left me. About an hour before midnight, I saw a soldier in an English uniform coming towards me. He was, I suspect, on the same errand. But he came and looked at my face. I spoke instantly, telling him who I was and assuring him of a reward if he were to remain by me. He said that he belonged to the 40th Regiment of Foot, but that he'd missed it. He released me from the dying men, and being unarmed, he took up a sword from the ground and stood over me, pacing backwards and forwards. Grand chap. Wasn't exactly selfless, though, was it? Because he was hoping for his reward. At 8 o'clock in the morning, some English were seen in the distance. He ran to them, and a messenger was sent off to Colonel Harvey. A cart came for me. I was placed on it and carried to a farmhouse, about a mile and a half distant, and laid in the bed which poor Gordon, as I understand afterwards, had just been carried out. Now, you'd think at this point that his worries were over, wouldn't you? No. Because, of course, we've got to bear in mind the state of Regency medical treatment of those days. So what happened? The jolting of the carriage and the difficulty of breathing were very painful. I had received 7 wounds. A surgeon slept in my room, and I was saved by continual bleeding. 120 ounces in 2 days. 120 ounces of blood is 3.4 litres. On top of all the blood that he'd lost on the battlefield, our own side now decides to bleed him even more. It is absolutely astounding the guy survived. This man survived the battle. And he lived until 1837, dying at the age of 53, which actually in those days wasn't a bad innings. He promoted to be Major General. He commanded the troops in the Ionian Islands, and in December 1826 he was appointed Governor of Malta and held that post for 8.5 years. But there we are, just a little bit of interest to keep you going during the lockdown. So bye for now, and everybody stay safe. Cheerio.